Uh, so if so, there I try to get everything as correct as possible. But if you find anything that is wrong in my slide, especially if you are the developer of a particular feature, feel free to correct me because I don't want to disseminate misinformation and mislead people. And also, if you think I missed anything that's worth mentioning, and just feel free to grab the microphone and say something is going on, and we should really know about this and that. Okay, that's yeah. So I think we are good to start. So let me just do a very short self-introduction for myself. I have many hats. I am a regular contributor to the Zen project. I'm hired by Citrix to do that, and which is good. And I'm also now a two-step maintainer, and also collected another hat as a release manager for 4.6, which this job turned out to be much tougher than I expected. I am also a regular contributor to other open source projects such as QEMU, libvirt, and well, a little bit, and then Linux. And my latest trophy is that I contributed a one-liner patch to OpenBSD to fix a very, sort of trivial bug in the interrupt handler code. Okay, yeah. So this is the agenda of my talk. I arrange it into three major sections or, well, items. I'll talk a little bit about 4.6 timeline and then give you some update in the latest development of various projects. And then a little bit about Zen 4.6 retrospective. And since Lars has covered quite a bit what I'm going to talk about, so I might just skip some of the slides and maybe just turn the last part into a discussion or something, so that if you have anything to discuss, have any question, just raise your hand and then we can talk about it. So for 4.6 timeline, we are still targeting a 9-month release cycle. The development starts on the January the 6th, 2015. And the freeze was on July 10th, 2015. And we cut RC1 last week, just before our team left for various conference and their vacations. And the next RC is still to be determined when is that. And we hope to release this 4.6 on October the 9th or before that. So the main goal of this release cycle is that we release on time, because during the last release we had we slipped a lot, quite a lot. So in 4.5 the actual release cycle was like 11 months, which was a bit too long in my opinion. So when I picked up this job as a release manager, my main goal was to get this release out of door on time. And then if we manage to release it a little bit earlier, before schedule, there's kind of an extra bonus, so that we can have a shorter release cycle and we open the tree earlier for contributions. Yeah. And then here comes the development update part. I will cover many things, as many things as possible. So I'll cover the Zen code base, which includes the hypervisor and toolstat and other stuff, and then say a little bit about OpenStack. But I think I would just skip that part because Lars had many fancier slides than I do. So yeah, I don't really have anything to talk about. And then the test lab and Linux and FreeBSD. Yeah. So the development update hypervisor in general. The general part doesn't, it doesn't, this feature are not tied to a particular architecture like x86 or ARM. So in this release cycle, we have the VM event support, which, if I remember correctly, is about sending out event to user space if you access the memory or something. Oh, Thomas, you are here. So if you are, okay, that's about correct. Okay. Yeah. So Thomas will talk about it later. And then also in this release cycle, we have improved XSM support. XSM is short for Zen Security Module. It's a bit like SE Linux in Linux. So it's also it's developed by NSA, and now the support is much more improved. So in this release cycle, we fixed a lot of things in the default policy, and we also tested in our test colo. And the ulterior goal is to enable it by default so that we have a much secure default setup in the hypervisor. And then the next thing about security is the VTPM 2.0 support. It's a virtual trusted platform module support. You can do trusted boot of your virtual machine. The other thing is that from Zen server team is the ground table scalability improvement. So, which is done by David Reliably, if I'm not mistaken. So with this improvement, that we are now able to get like a 200% improvement in the network throughput in inter-host VM network throughput, which is quite great. So the original throughput was like 10 gigabit, 7 gigabit when you run 20 VMs on a host and do the inter-VM network throughput test. Now it's like with this patch and the next one, it's like 30 gigabits per second. Smaller. It's like 20.
I can't remember the numbers, but I'll be sharing them tomorrow.
Right. So you also have the talk. So, right. So I won't go into detail. And then we also remove a very desk scheduler, which we don't think no one is using that. And then there's the x86 specific improvement. So there are lots of Intel contributions, like the Intel alternate P2M, the Intel page multiplication logging, and cache allocation technology, and this and that. The alternate P2M is a particularly interesting feature because now, because as far as I can tell, Zen is the first open source hypervisor that supports such features. So this feature allows you to have multiple P2M, just a physical to machine mapping table for a virtual machine. And this feature enables you to do a zero footplane guest memory introspection, and also it enables some possibilities to implement high performance NFV applications. And then next thing is the page multiplication logging stuff. It's an Intel hardware features that is used to log dirty bitmaps, so that you don't need to do it with software, so that you can have improved performance when you do migrations and maybe some other stuff. And there's the cache allocation technology, which is about cache partitioning and QoS. Okay, and the memory bandwidth monitoring also falls into the same category. And the reserved memory region reporting is about legacy device pass-through, like USB and graphic cards. The next thing is virtual performance monitoring units, which is contributed by Oracle, that allows you to profile the hypervisor and the guest with the with the perf 2 included in Linux kernel, but that perf 2 part is not yet there, which is under development. And then the final thing is the virtual NUMA for HVM guest, which allows you to conjure up a virtual topology of NUMA, conjure up a virtual NUMA topology for the HVM guest. And then here's the ARM side of improvements. We've successfully merged the pass-through for non-PCI devices and ARM Gig v2 and on Gig v3 support. We also re-enabled 32-bit user space in 64-bit guest support. And Linaro contributed the OVMF on ARM patches series. We also had a bunch of new platform supports, such as the ThunderX and Huawei and Xilinx SoC platforms. So, did I miss anything, Stefano? Oh, okay, thank you. Right, and then here's the two-step part. So Andrew Cooper from Citrix contributed libxc and libxl migration v2. So before this, so the legacy migration v1 was actually a bit messy because, well, it was not very clearly spec'd out, and then the implementation was also messy. There's no clear split between the libzen control and libzen lights, which makes it very hard to maintain and develop new features on top of that. So Andrew Cooper said that I just rewrote that whatsoever. And then he has a talk this morning about that. I think he'll go into detail. And then Remers, which is a high availability solution, has been switched to based on migration v2. Yeah, I hope that, Andrew, is that correct? Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's all in your talk later, yeah. And then libzen line now supports asynchronous operation cancellation, which means you can cancel long-running operations, which is useful for some high-level two-step, which might want to have some rigid control of the time and resources. And then there are other miscellaneous improvements such as Spice QXL support, HCI DEX support. So I won't just read the list, and you've already seen that. Right. And the other thing is that now we moved the mini-OS out to a separate tree. So that's a move to try to foster the unikernel movement. And then after that, we have mini-OS ARM support, which is ready to apply, but not yet applied. And then we have another project called Project Raisin. I think Stefano is going to cover that tomorrow, yes. And then it's a bit, so this is the things coming in the pipeline, which is quite a lot. And some of them are actually quite close to be merged in this release, but unfortunately they miss it. So I'll go through some interesting ones. For example, the right, so let me see. Yeah, so the first thing is the X-Spice, which is going to be covered by Conran. It's not yet here. So it's about hypervisor hog patching. And then there are some other Intel features such as the graphic pass-through and post-interrupt support and P-state driver. And then there are also the PV and HVM USB device pass-through and colo based on migration v2 and all the other things. And if you're interested in knowing some or any of them, just talk to me after this talk, and I'll try my best to explain them to you. Yeah. Let me have a look at my time. I still got lots of time left. But then, right. Yeah. So this is the diff stat for 4.6 release. So it's actually, well, quite interesting because I did this just before we cut RC1. So in this release, we had like 91,000 lines of edit code, and then we deleted 85,000 lines of code. And in total, the lines of changes are positive 5,000, around 6,000 lines of code changes. Yeah, which is, well, great because we got many features in, but we only increased our code base size for 6,000 lines. But of course, this is like we cheated a bit because the removal of mini-auth deleted like 40,000 lines of code. Yeah. So in the end, if we don't count the removal of mini-auth, we probably introduced like 50,000 lines of code added. Okay, this is the other stuff, like the test lab. I think Lars already covered this. So our new community test lab is live, and testing capacity is increased and growing. We now have 24 hosts in our pool, and we plan to add more in the upcoming years. We also have a lot more test cases. Now we are constantly testing stop domains and libvirt and OVMF, and we also have many test cases in the pipeline, like distro test, which tests different distros like Debian and probably CentOS and all the other distros. And if you are interested in adding any other distros in our test lab, just feel free to post to ZenDevel and ask for directions and how to do that. It probably wouldn't be too hard if you know how to write Perl and Tcl and SQL and Bash. Well, yeah. So we've got a lot more contributions on test case. So I'm not going to go through all of them. And then the OpenStack, we had our CI loop set up and running and moved from group C to group B. And Lars already covered that. I'm going to skip that. And then there's the Linux side of development update, which is sent by Conran. And I'm sort of giving the presentation on his behalf. Yeah. So I don't claim that I know much about every item on this, but I try to, I'll try to explain it as clear as possible. And in 3.18, there's a Sans SCSI front-end and back-end support. And then in 3.18, we now change the P to M from a tree to an array. So there's a typo here. Should be in an array. Sorry about that. So now this improves the performance. And then in 4.6, we have preemption support for the priv command driver, which means some long running operations, such as like mapping memories from other guests and destroying a guest with a lot of memory, won't cause soft lockup in the Linux kernel and won't trigger watchdog timeout, and which is nice. And then this P80 runtime support, which I have no idea what it's about. Honestly, I don't know what that means. And then this XenPad support. So now write combine. Sorry, another typo here. Write combine for GPU and infinite bands works. And then 4.1, we have added XenPV Epic support. And we also improved the performance of mmap cores, and then update hypervisor symbols so that they can show up probably under perf. In 4.2, we added XenBlock front multi-page ring support, so that so I was told that the performance improved by 250%. Wow. And then we also had a fix to fix the non-persistent grant use case, and also have a bunch of cleanups in preparation for the 64K pages support on ARM. And then in 4.3, we add the same block front multi-queue support, which makes use of the Linux kernel multi-queue block API to further improve the performance. And then We also add in the P2M PV get support so that it can address 512 gigabytes of memory or more. And then there's the VPMU kernel support so that you can profile the kernel, but the perf tool is still to be done. And then the next thing is the 64K kilobyte page support for ARM. And then here's the development update for FreeBSD, which I got from Roger. And which, I mean, I think most of them targets for FreeBSD 11, which will be released next year. So now we had, I think Roger has committed experimental PVH DOM0 and DOM-U support. And then some third party, John Baldwin, removed the classic i386 PV port support. And then Colin Percival added in indirect descriptor support for block front so that FreeBSD has better block driver performance. And then Roger also removed some very broken FreeBSD specific extensions. And then Julian worked a little bit on ARM32 and ARM64 get support. It's still under development. Okay. I think that's all for the development update part. Do I miss anything that worth mentioning? Okay, no? Right. Yeah, so I just want to go a little bit into the retrospective. So these are my very personal observation in this release that I want to talk a little bit about. Again, this is a very personal observation. To get a full picture, we need more numbers. So, and I think Lars is working on that. But I do want to mention a little bit about some of my personal observations and feeling and thoughts about that. And feel free to discuss this here and after this section with me and Lars. So now what I think now vendors has the desire to use upstream Zen to ship features to their customers and users. And that means if they miss a release, they have a bigger impact than before for them. So if they miss the release, they might miss the sales goal, they might break their promise to their customers. So now I think we fully appreciate that. And I myself, with my maintenance hat on, would like to help them as much as possible to upstream their features. For example, so actually all our maintainers are very keen on helping them upstream their features, such as providing many feedbacks on the design and the actual code, and discussion on how to move forward if we have deadlock or something. But we do have a bottom line, is that every decision we make is still based on technical merit. That means we normally don't yield political pressures, and we would like to keep it that way. And because Zen is now used by many vendors, we do want to have a very neutral process and neutral, open, and transparent process to handle this kind of things. So I think making decisions based on technical merit is the best approach for all the vendors and players in this field. And then I also think, I as a maintainer and release manager and all the other maintainers and contributors may all have the feelings that it's getting harder and harder to upstream a feature in Zen. And then that would build up tensions and frustration during the process, which is not very good in the long term. So normally now, if you want to upstream a feature which sort of big features, which involves complex design and many code changes, you would need many iterations. So as far as I can tell, the highest record I know is 25 iterations so far. Yeah, but normally for big features, it would probably take 8 to 10 iterations. That's about normal. But we don't know yet why it's getting harder to upstream a feature. It could be that our maintainers are being pickier than before because we are more argumentative. It's like arguing over very small things like coding style and how we do certain things by shedding too much. Or submitters just don't address all comments because they keep ignoring comments and because I don't know why. Or it could be both. And the other thing is that we might respond a lot slower than before because, well, maybe just because we have a lot more contributions but not enough reviewers. And then the things in our backlog is just keep growing, but never comes to the bottom of it. But yeah, we do want to encourage more people to do patch reviews. Yeah, and even to become maintainers themselves. I mean, we would definitely help them if they have the will to do that. And then because we changed the release process a little bit, we sort of scrapped the soft freeze, and this caused some surprise to our contributors because, well, people just don't read emails or just don't read very long emails. And every time I send out my emails, people just skip to the parts that they are interested in and ignore all the other preambles and this and that, which may contain some important information. So I think this can be fixed by getting better at writing emails myself and writing a better wiki page about that. But in the end, we still need input from the contributors themselves about how they feel and what they think, whether they think it works or not. And then we already kicked off the discussion on Zendevel and started by Lars. You already have some suggestions so far, either made publicly or privately to me and Lars. It's about, so that ideas such as we should reopen the trees earlier for contributions so that the contributors don't keep their code for too long. And we should shorten the release cycle so that if a vendor miss a release, the impact wouldn't be too bad for them. And put together better roadmap pages so that people have a clear idea what is going to happen and when it's going to happen. And also, well, maybe try to fix the release day, freeze day, so that we had maybe 2 to 3 freeze each year. So move towards a more predictable schedule for release. Yeah. So there are a lot of open questions at the moment, how we can improve and what we should improve. Just we encourage you as contributors and to join the discussion and to send emails on Zendevel or send Lars or me emails about that, about what you think and how you feel about the whole thing, the whole release. Okay, I think that's all I'm going to talk about. Is there any questions? No? Oh, cool. Then we shall have a break.
Actually, wait, one question. Are you going to be running test days with this cycle?
Right. I think that's a very good question, and I completely missed that. Yeah, I think I will try to arrange a test day for RC2 or RC3 later. Yeah, because I was too busy for this talk and all the other stuff. Sorry about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, nothing else? Cool. That's the end of my talk. Thank you.